Can one start life anew at the age of 33? This question had been haunting Amanda ever since her now ex-husband declared his intention to divorce. His words were a real blow. When she sensed his waning affection, Amanda believed that a decade of marriage naturally cooled passion and romance, and she believed that love evolved into respect, tenderness, and habit. But Peter didn't see it that way. It was a regular evening. As usual, Amanda was waiting for her husband from work. She had cooked his favourite soup, boiled potatoes, and cleaned their apartment. She loved being a housewife, taking care of her spouse and creating a comfortable home. Plus, she had time for her favourite hobby, reading and writing detective stories. But she never shared her writings, thinking that no one else would find them interesting. Once, she showed Peter one of her stories and he laughed. "You think you're a writer, my Agatha Christie," he jokingly said. "If you enjoy it, keep going. But remember, not everyone is destined to be a great writer." Amanda clearly understood that. She even laughed at herself. After all, her husband is a connoisseur of classical literature and studies works of ancient Greek and European philosophers. He surely knows what is worthy of attention and what is not. Amanda persisted in her writing, despite perceiving flaws in her work like weak dialogues, poorly spun intrigue, and overtly obvious criminals. Yet an unparalleled pleasure was derived from her work progress. She immersed herself in the text, lived the described events, and couldn't stop. Her writing hobby didn't interfere with her primary responsibilities. Recognized as an excellent homemaker by both Peter and his mother Suzanne, Amanda excelled in her domestic duties. Suzanne, who tasted Amanda's dishes with the scrutiny of a master chef and instantly spotted any disarray, seemed as if she might arrive with white gloves to check for dust on the bookshelves. Yet Amanda was confident that Suzanne would find nothing to criticize, as she maintained the house to be cleaner than an operating room. Amanda's life was serene, devoid of strong emotions or shocks. It seemed to be continuing smoothly until Peter expressed his desire for freedom. This evening, upon returning from work, he washed his hands and entered the kitchen, a typical routine. Amanda served Peter a plate of soup and sat across from him. After eating 2 spoonfuls, Peter pushed the plate away and said, "Amanda, we need to talk. I've been avoiding this conversation, but I can't go on like this. I want us to get divorced." Amanda thought she might have misunderstood. "Are you joking?" she asked quietly. Peter shook his head in response. He stood up and began to pace the spacious kitchen. "I really can't do it. It's the same thing every day. You're not evolving, you know. You've stopped in your development." Peter emphasized the last phrase, and Amanda suddenly realized that he had already rehearsed this monologue in his head, setting the emphasis in advance. He always did so before meeting with business partners or going to his bosses. Peter continued, "I'm not satisfied with this. You're only interested in cooking and cleaning. You don't even leave the house. And I need something else. I want to be thrilled, you know? I want to see my wife as a companion, not just a housewife." "But we had an agreement once. You said yourself that you didn't want me to work," Amanda timidly objected. That conversation had indeed happened. They got married soon after Amanda graduated from the college and received a diploma as a language teacher. She passionately dreamed of working in a school, loved children, and enjoyed talking to them, encouraging them not just to memorize the material, but to think and reason. Peter was just starting to work at his firm, and he was earning quite well. Before their wedding, he stated that a wife should be the keeper of the home and not work as much as her husband. "I love you because you're calm, sweet, cozy. If you become a teacher, you'll turn into a mean woman who doesn't have time for the house and her husband." Amanda, why don't you stay home, and I'll bring you money. At least until I'm back on my feet, and then we'll see. I owe you a mammoth. You owe me a hearth. And Amanda agreed. She was deeply in love with him and would have accepted anything Peter offered. At times she regretted not taking a job at the school where she interned, as there was an open position, but she had listened to Peter and followed his advice. Now it turns out I shouldn't have left my job. How can one understand these men? She said to Peter. Amanda, that was a long time ago. Now you've changed. There's nothing to discuss with you. And your little writings. You just sit there and invent stories no one wants to hear. You should have a blog or an Instagram page, but no, you don't even do that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we're strangers. We don't even have children. That's why I've decided we should get a divorce. And me? Amanda asked and looked at her husband's face. He was handsome when they were first married, with a chiselled face and piercing grey eyes. He's still handsome now, albeit heavier, which suits him. His hair wasn't as thick, though. Peter approached Amanda and looked down at her. She felt like a little girl being chastised by her parents for something she didn't do. I've made my decision. If you don't agree to a divorce, we'll settle it in court. Amanda trembled, shivering uncontrollably, as if caught in an icy wind. Peter wrinkled his nose. Don't start a scene. It's decided. I won't change my decision. We must each go our separate ways, without regret or reminiscing about the past. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving her alone. She heard him unfold the couch in the living room. She didn't know how long she sat there, just staring at one point in front of her. Then she got up, poured the leftover soup into the sink, and washed her plate. Maybe he'll change his mind tomorrow. We've been together for 10 years. It's not meaningless. He will surely reconsider. Amanda thought as she laid in the now cold and empty marital bed. However, the next day brought no change. Peter left early for work, leaving Amanda alone. She busied herself by tidying the apartment, washing the floors, and preparing dough for pies. She longed for distraction, anything to avoid thinking about the previous day's conversation. Despite her efforts, she couldn't stop thinking and decided to call her mother-in-law. She hoped she could influence Peter, as Suzanne often praised Amanda as a wonderful wife, an excellent housewife. Moreover, Amanda had no one else to turn to. She had no friends. Her social life diminished after her wedding. The only remaining interactions were birthday or New Year's greetings on social media. It was possible to call her mum, but she was too preoccupied with her life. She had recently married for the 3rd time. Sonora gave birth to her daughter early. She was only 16 years old. The school romance ended sadly. The guy left Sonora after learning about the pregnancy, and she hid her belly from her parents almost until the 7th month. Of course, Sonora didn't need a baby at such an age, and Amanda's upbringing was handled by her grandmother. Anyway, the first person Amanda shared the bad news with was her mother-in-law. "Amanda, what happened?" she asked calmly, and Amanda decided that Peter had not told his mother about his decision. "Peter said he wants a divorce." Amanda's eyes brimmed with tears. "And I don't know what to do." Suzanne fell silent before saying, "I know. He's been wanting to tell you for a long time. He just didn't have the courage." Both women fell silent. Amanda felt as though her heart had grown too large for her chest and was about to shatter. "But what did I do wrong? Why?" "Amanda, a woman should be not only a homemaker, but also a companion. Remember how I've told you this repeatedly." Amanda couldn't recall such conversations with her mother-in-law, but she decided not to argue. "I fully understand him and support his decision," Suzanne continued. "Although there's something you don't know. 2 things, actually. It's better if you're aware. First, Peter wants kids, and I want grandchildren. You're already 33. You've been delaying this decision too long. Any wise woman would understand that every man needs an heir. Amanda had never become a mother, and it troubled her. For the first 3 years they tried for a baby, but pregnancy eluded them. The doctors were equally baffled. Both spouses were healthy, but tests continually yielded negative results. Much to Amanda's despair. When Amanda turned 27, Peter suggested giving up on having a child. If it's not happening, it's not meant to be, he told her calmly. Perhaps it's better to live for ourselves. After all, children bring headaches, screams, diapers, and illnesses. Amanda thought her husband had accepted the situation, but now she discovered he too had dreams of parenthood. Suzanne continued, "There's another crucial matter. I don't want to upset you more, but it's best to clear everything up. Peter has been seeing another woman for quite some time. He introduced her to me, and now she's carrying my son's baby. Peter, being a man of integrity, cannot live in 2 families. Believe me, this decision wasn't easy for him either." Tears streamed down Amanda's face. "It turns out that all this time I was just a waste of an element in this mosaic," she thought bitterly. "Amanda, you have to accept it." Suzanne's voice lacked sympathy. "Let Peter go. You'll meet your destiny. You're still very young, Amanda, and you have to accept it and move on." "Thank you," Amanda interrupted her mother-in-law and hung up. "Accept it and move on. Easy for her to say. I'm already 33. I have no looks, no profession, no savings. What do I do? Where do I go?" Amanda had no answers. In the evening, Peter returned home in high spirits. Amanda wished he could at least feign sadness, but his joy at impending freedom was evident. Without even removing his coat or shoes, Peter broached the topic of dividing their assets. "Amanda, we need to resolve some legal issues. I don't want to delay." The woman was frightened by his words. She had hoped that Peter, an honest man, wouldn't leave her with nothing. She had made a mistake once. The apartment she lived with her husband was registered under his mother's name. The money for the down payment on the mortgage was given by Amanda's mother and Suzanne. At that time, Peter had convinced her that the apartment should be registered under his mother's name, and Amanda didn't argue. Now it seemed that the apartment wasn't considered jointly acquired property. Peter explained this to Amanda with a faint half-smile. "So I thought we should do the right thing legally. The apartment stays with my mother. I hope you won't claim it in court, but I'm ready to pay you the amount that your relatives gave you." Amanda wondered where she should go. Perhaps to her mother's place. But her mother was unlikely to welcome her with open arms. Sonora was now happily living with her new husband, who was 12 years younger and worked as a courier. Amanda didn't know much about him, only that he was exceptionally handsome. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not a monster. I've thought of everything. I'll leave you our house in the village. It's not bad. Your money should be enough for repairs," Peter said. "I have to go to the country?" Amanda recalled the house Peter had mentioned. They had purchased it the summer before last. The lot was inexpensive, and they intended to build a cottage for summer vacations. But to live there permanently? The house had a furnace, so Amanda knew she wouldn't freeze in winter, but moving from a comfortable city apartment to this place was a crazy thing. "Peter, do you realize what you're proposing?" Amanda groaned. "If you don't like it, sell the lot and buy something else. Amanda, you're an adult. I can't keep dealing with you forever. It's time to mature," Peter responded. "I won't be home tonight. Think about how you'll move and what you'll take. We're going to sign the divorce papers next week. Don't do anything rash." Before she could object, Peter hurriedly left the apartment. Amanda's mother took the news of the divorce in stride. It even seemed that she was uninterested in her daughter's life at all. "The air is fresh, the produce is good. Maybe you'll invite Dan and me over," she suggested when Amanda called to tell her about the impending move. "I will," Amanda promised. "Thanks, Mum." "You're welcome, doll. Bye." That was all the conversation. Amanda disliked recalling the following weeks. The divorce was swift. She had thought she might die of a broken heart after leaving the signing all the papers. But that didn't happen. Peter bid her farewell, got into his car, and drove off into his new, free, prosperous and happy life. Meanwhile, she sat on a bench, clutching the paper that marked the end of their marriage. Amanda thought about Peter's mistress. She had already discovered who she was. Peter's colleague, whom Amanda occasionally spoke to, told her the truth. It appeared that Peter had started an affair with a new company employee about a year ago. Her name was Gina, and she was only 23 years old. Amanda found her social media page and started to scrutinize. She's attractive, no doubt, Amanda thought bitterly when she saw photos of her competitor. At 33, Amanda was starting to notice signs of aging in her reflection, wrinkles, the first strands of grey hair, and a slightly less defined facial contour. Gina, on the other hand, was stunning. She wasn't shy about sharing photos with Peter, and Amanda spent hours torturing herself by looking at them. 3 weeks post-divorce, Amanda arrived at her new home. Peter had been generous enough to help with the move, hiring a small truck and letting Amanda keep the kitchen appliances and washing machine. The modern appliances looked improper against the backdrop of the old furniture, worn-out walls, and the shabby carpet. Amanda felt like an alien in this house, which felt uninhabitable. She questioned her ability to survive, especially in such conditions. She felt an overwhelming urge to lie down on the couch and never get up. However, after the movers left, she wandered around the house, gauging the extent of the decay. It was evident that the house needed a major overhaul. Despite it being warm May, the house was cold, damp, and carried an unfamiliar smell, akin to that of mushrooms. After examining her new possession, Amanda slumped into the armchair, covered her face with her hands, and cried. She felt lonely, abandoned by the only person she had trusted and loved. Suddenly, she heard a soft knock on the door. Startled, she wondered, who could it be? Had she unpaid the movers? But she had counted the bills multiple times before getting them. Amanda wiped her eyes with her t-shirt's edge and listened again to the repeated knocking. Rising, she approached the door and asked, "Who's there?"
"Your neighbour. Open up,"
a raspy male voice answered.
"Let's get acquainted."
Amanda tucked a loose strand behind her ear and opened the door. Standing on the threshold was an elderly man, dressed in a large knit grey sweater. His face was framed by a long white beard and bushy moustache. He squinted at Amanda and smiled, revealing strong white teeth.
"I live next door. You can call me Mr. O'Reilly,"
the elderly man said, extending his hand. Yellow spots marked his fingers, leading Amanda to think he must smoke strong cigarettes. "Amanda," she responded, shaking his rough, calloused hand.
"How long are you going to stay with us?"
Mr. O'Reilly inquired. "Forever," Amanda choked out, hastily wiping away unsolicited tears. "I'm going to live here from now on." Amanda felt like collapsing onto the floor and crying. Mr. O'Reilly looked at her in surprise.
"Why are you so sad? It's good here. The air is fresh and the food is good."
Amanda recalled her mother's recent words and sighed. "I've never lived in the village," she suddenly confessed. My husband..." She broke down, unable to contain her emotions. Mr. O'Reilly paused, looking at her in surprise, then placed a comforting hand on her shoulder.
Don't cry. People live here and don't complain. You'll get used to it.
Amanda hesitated. Why don't you come in? Let's have some tea. I have a kettle somewhere, in a box. Mr. O'Reilly smiled.
I'll pass on the treat. You should come to us instead. My wife has been baking pies all morning. We can chat. Don't be shy. In this village we visit each other whenever we want. We also help each other out.
The idea of trying the pies appealed to Amanda. She suddenly realized she was incredibly hungry. When had she last eaten? It seemed like yesterday morning, and even then she hadn't been able to swallow a single bite. Really? May I?
Of course, you must.
Mr. O'Reilly nodded with a smile.
Our house is just next to yours. Clean up, calm down a bit and come over. My wife will be happy. Our children don't visit often, and she misses having young ones around.
I'm not young. I'm 33 years old, Amanda replied with a hint of a smile.
I'm 83.
Mr. O'Reilly stroked his beard.
To me, you're still a child.
He turned and headed for the gate. Amanda looked at him in surprise. 83 years old, she exclaimed. She would have guessed he was no older than 65. She quickly washed her face with water, combed her hair and tied it into a ponytail. With no mirror in the house, she resorted to using her powder compact. Her face was puffy and her eyes were red. Yeah, pretty girl, she whispered to herself. The neighbours welcomed her warmly. You're so thin, poor thing, Mr. O'Reilly's wife said with a sympathetic look at Amanda.
You probably didn't eat properly in the city. Our daughter is the same, subsists on cabbage leaves only. You'll meet her when she returns.
Amanda enjoyed eating pies, legan berry jam and homemade flavoured cookies. The new acquaintances asked her about her past and how she ended up in the village. Initially, Amanda was reluctant to share her sad story, but gradually she opened up, telling them about Peter, his mistress, and their future child. Mrs. O'Reilly listened attentively to Amanda, looking at her with genuine sympathy. Amanda realized that her own mother had never shown her such attention, often leaving her to handle school and college problems alone. When the story was finished, Mrs. O'Reilly placed a warm hand on Amanda's palm and met her gaze. Amanda expected Mrs. Riley to deliver some profound wisdom that would instantly ease her pain, like in movies or romance novels where an older woman imparts life lessons to a younger one.
Well, forget that jerk. He was your husband and now he's gone,
Mrs. O'Reilly suddenly blurted out. Amanda laughed nervously. We were together for 10 years. How can I just forget?
You won't forget immediately, but eventually you will. You'll even be glad you got divorced. I also divorced my first husband when I was over 40. Remember, darling? I remember. I seized my opportunity then.
Mr. O'Reilly wrapped an arm around his wife and kissed her cheek.
I recall you scolding me because I serenaded you under your windows.
And I haven't forgotten your serenades. It was so embarrassing. I couldn't look into my neighbour's eyes. Can you believe it, Amanda? He sang so loudly that you could hear him in the next village. Everyone laughed. Amanda started to feel a little better, comforted by the company of these kind people. Even when she was with Peter, she was always on edge. He would ridicule her in front of others, criticising her cooking skills and appearance, insisting she needed to learn to take criticism. Now she felt at ease. Whether it was the sight of Mr. and Mrs. O'Reilly's love for each other, or the feeling of home and warmth, she didn't know, but she felt good.
What are you planning to do? How will you live?
Mrs. O'Reilly suddenly asked. I don't know yet. I don't know how to do anything. I graduated from college a long time ago and haven't worked a day since. Do you know where I could find a teacher position? Amanda responded.
I don't even know. There's a school in the neighbouring village. Our kids go there, but they don't need anyone. A new teacher just started."
Mrs. O'Reilly hesitated.
"To the farm, maybe," Mr. O'Reilly suggested. "What's she going to do on a farm? She's a city girl."
Mrs. O'Reilly appraised Amanda. "What kind of farm?"
"We have a good farm, about 3 kilometres away. Our Kendra runs it. She is an incredible woman. She started her business from scratch. Half the village works for her now,"
Mrs. O'Reilly explained. Mr. O'Reilly smiled, his face beaming with pride for the businesswoman. "Are there any vacancies on the farm?" Amanda asked hopefully.
"There are always opportunities,"
replied Mrs. O'Reilly.
"You should go see Kendra. She might have advice for you. She recently got married at 45 to a vet. He's a good man, good-looking and hard-working. There was a city slicker trying to court Kendra, but she brushed him off."
Amanda tried to picture Kendra Smith. For some reason she imagined a full-figured woman with bright blue eyeshadow, well-groomed eyebrows, raised in perpetual surprise. She even envisaged her dressed in a tweed jacket and a knee-length skirt.
"You should definitely go. It doesn't cost anything to ask,"
Mr. O'Reilly suggested.
"She might have something for you. Don't be scared. She's a wonderful woman."
Half an hour later, Amanda left for her new home. Mrs. O'Reilly handed her a bag of pies and reminded her to visit often.
"And ask me if you need anything. I'll help you settle in, and I can ask my husband for assistance. Don't be shy. Despite his age, he still lifts a weight every morning."
Mrs. O'Reilly was clearly proud of her husband, making Amanda feel a bit lonely. Everyone seemed to have someone. Her mum had Dan, Peter had his beautiful Gina, and even Kendra Smith had found a spouse despite her age. But Amanda was alone. At home, Amanda meticulously cleaned the old leather sofa and arranged her bedding. She was certain she wouldn't be able to sleep in such unfamiliar surroundings. In situations like this, she often found herself dreaming up new storylines. "A murder on the farm. Everyone is a suspect," Amanda pondered. "Why not? It's an underrepresented theme." After imagining some twists and turns for her potential plot, she fell into a deep sleep. The next day, Amanda resolved to visit the farm first thing in the morning to meet the famed Kendra Smith. She woke up at 6, struck by the unfamiliar quietness. The usual city noise was absent, replaced by distant voices and the crowing of roosters. Surprisingly refreshed, she stretched, feeling ready for her new life. She could only hope that a job would be available. Peter had deposited a small sum into her account, but it wouldn't last more than 6 months. Amanda didn't want to touch this money, preferring to save it for a rainy day. But that day hadn't come yet. After quickly eating a cookie and sipping some mineral water, Amanda washed her face and headed to her interview. The farm was only 3 kilometres from the village. Amanda strolled along the road, savouring the fresh air and light breeze. She passed a field sown with sunflowers that hadn't bloomed yet, and imagined how enchanting it would be in July. Finding the farm was easy. The first thing she noticed was a red brick barn. Despite the unfamiliar odour, she admired the structure and quickened her pace. The administration building was modest, consisting of just 3 rooms and a semblance of a lobby. In the hall sat a young girl behind a desk, typing on a computer. She seemed fresh out of high school and was too engrossed in her screen to notice Amanda. "Hello," Amanda said cautiously. Startled, the girl tore her gaze from the monitor. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice you. Mrs. Smith mentioned that I've been placing commas incorrectly, so I'm struggling to find all my errors. By the way, I'm Mia, the secretary," the girl said, pride evident in her voice. Amanda smiled. "I'm here for a job opportunity. Mrs. Smith was recommended." "That's great. She always conducts the interviews herself. Please, have a seat. I'll check if she's available." Mia stood up, adjusted her short skirt, and knocked on a door adorned with the nameplate of the farm owner. "We have an applicant. May she come in?" "Sure." Mia looked at Amanda, then opened the door hospitably. "Come in. Good luck." Amanda felt her anxiety rising. Her hands grew cold and clammy. A lump formed in her throat. She swallowed, then walked on shaky legs into the office. What can she do? What does she know? Teach language and literature to cows and chickens? As Amanda passed Mia, the girl gave her a comforting smile and whispered, "Just don't be afraid." Her words didn't exactly inspire confidence in Amanda, but she had no choice. Entering the office, she found it plainly decorated. Shelves with folders along the walls and a table in the middle. Seated behind the desk was a pretty woman who looked nothing like the image Amanda had conjured up the day before. Kendra Smith was dressed in a white shirt, a thin chain around her neck, and sported a modern haircut with strands framing her face. She gestured to a chair by the door. "Have a seat, let's talk." Amanda obediently sat, her palms folded in her lap, her back straight. "As I understand it, you're applying for the milkmaid position? That's wonderful. We're expanding production and we're short-staffed. Let's start with the conditions." "I'm sorry," Amanda interrupted her, instantly blushing with embarrassment. "I'm not here for the milkmaid position." "Are you a zoo technician?" Kendra raised an eyebrow in surprise. "I don't recall any other openings." "No, Amanda stammered, wishing she had prepared a speech in advance like Peter. Improvisation was not her strong suit. "I just came here to see if there's any work for me." Kendra tapped her pencil on the table. "I apologize. I forgot to ask your name. Mia always forgets to introduce visitors." She smiled. "Amanda. I recently moved to the village from the city for family reasons," Amanda explained. Kendra nodded, encouraging her to continue. "I'm currently unemployed. I graduated from the college 10 years ago as a language teacher. I didn't work. After the wedding, I stayed at home, and now I'm divorced." Amanda didn't want to be pitied, but there was no pity in Kendra's eyes. She was focused on her, twirling a pencil in her hands. "I see. So you have no work experience, you have a liberal arts education, and you've come to us," Kendra clarified. "I'm sorry, really." Amanda jumped up. "That was stupid. I'm sorry to bother you." She moved toward the door. "Wait, Amanda! I haven't told you anything yet. Sit down. I need to think." Amanda returned to her seat. Kendra leaned back in her chair. "I've already said we need labour, and for the most part that's true. As for administrative staff, I like to keep it to a minimum, just me and Mia. But I've been considering hiring another secretary. Mia is a good girl, but she's not up to all the tasks yet. Sometimes she brings documents with mistakes. I want to hire a tutor for her, but I don't want to fire her. I see that she has potential, and the numbers of documents is growing. She just can't cope physically. How would you feel about becoming an assistant secretary? It won't be easy, as you'll technically be under a very young girl." "I'm ready!" Amanda almost shouted. Kendra laughed. "I can see that, and it's fine. Start part-time and we'll see how things work out. Are you ready? The pay won't be much, but our employees can take a certain amount of free products: milk, meat, eggs, cheese." Amanda nodded. Leaving the office, Amanda smiled blissfully. One less problem. I had a job. Not in my field, but a job. "What did Mrs. Smith say?" Mia asked with glowing eyes of curiosity. "She's hired me as a deputy secretary," Amanda replied. "Yay!" Mia exclaimed, jumping from her chair. "I'm going to have a deputy! That is great! We'll work together. Why don't I show you everything here?" Mia leapt from behind her desk and opened the boss's door without knocking. "Can I give the new girl a tour?" "Only ensure the documents are on my desk by evening," Kendra replied. "They will be on the desk tonight," Mia nodded. The girl gave Amanda a tour, introducing her to the staff. She chatted constantly, displaying her enthusiasm for her work. "We have a state-of-the-art organisation here, better than in Europe. That's what Mrs. Smith's husband says. He researches how and where they work, then implements those strategies here. We've even built a cheese factory and plan to start producing new types of cheese." Amanda listened attentively to Mia. Despite her scattered storytelling, jumping from one topic to another, it was evident she took pride in her work. After bidding Mia farewell, Amanda went home and shared the news with her neighbours, Mrs. and Mr. O'Reilly, who were genuinely pleased for her and wished her good luck.
"I told you! Kendra Smith's a good woman. Just remember she's strict. She could expel you for drunkenness and truancy. There is a family living 2 houses down. You'll get to know them. Both husband and wife drink there. Kendra took them in out of pity. They had a little girl, and they had nothing to feed her. She only asked them not to drink, but they started drinking with the first paycheck. So she kicked them out. I felt sorry for the girl, but not for them."
Amanda spent the remainder of the day cleaning. She discarded the old carpets, swept and mopped the floor, and hung cleaned curtains on the windows. The house instantly felt more welcoming. Amanda tried to avoid thinking about Peter, but before going to sleep, she checked his social media page. He had posted new photos with his girlfriend. They were at a restaurant. Gina was wearing a beautiful sequin dress. Such a dress would look ridiculous on Amanda. Amanda sighed and closed the browser. There was no point dwelling on the past. Peter had a new life now. He's about to be a father, and I need to adapt to my new circumstances. Amanda remembered her grandmother's favourite parable about 2 frogs. One frog, trapped in a tub of milk, gave up and drowned. The other frog strove to escape, even when it seemed hopeless. She churned the milk into butter with help of her legs and escaped. Amanda wanted to be like the second frog. Even if it seemed hopeless, she would act according to her circumstances and see if she could churn her own butter. She'd already found a job. Next, she'd see what comes. Before bed, she pondered the future of her detective story. Suppose the protagonist is a farm owner, framed for murder. How would she clear her name? Could her competitors be involved? The next day, Amanda started her new job. She quickly adapted to her new role. The woman familiarized herself with the archive, devising a system to easily locate necessary documents. Amanda also enjoyed her job and conversing with Mia. Despite the girl's occasional inattentiveness and verbal blunders, her enthusiasm and commitment to the farm's well-being were contagious. Amanda often visited different parts of the farm to understand its operations better. She was keen to learn everything about the production process. Her busy schedule left little time to contemplate Peter. At home, she managed to write a few pages of her detective story. On weekends, she carried out minor house repairs, painting walls, removing old wallpaper, and cleaning windows. She planned more significant repairs for the future. Despite her fatigue, Amanda noticed she looked healthier than before. Her complexion was fresher, wrinkles smoothed, and extra pounds melted away like ice cream in July sun. Her hair even glistened and curled slightly, as if she frequented a beauty salon. Amanda attributed these changes to the country air and soft well water. One Saturday morning, Amanda sat on the porch with tea and a book. She had purchased new detective novels in town. Although she didn't have as much reading time as before, her new life suited her well. She read less but enjoyed it more. From the corner of her eye, Amanda spotted motion at the gate. A little girl about 5 years old was standing by the fence, biting her index fingernail while looking at Amanda. "Hi," Amanda greeted. She hadn't seen this girl before, even though she thought she already knew all the local children. The girl was quiet, then removed her finger from her mouth, shyly waving and smiling. "What's your name?" Amanda asked. "Kelly," the little girl replied. "Do you want to visit?" Kelly nodded. "Come on in, the gate is open." Amanda invited the girl. Kelly hesitantly opened the gate and walked up the path towards Amanda. Upon reaching the porch, she stopped. Amanda noticed she was staring at a plate of cookies as if spellbound. "Help yourself." Amanda picked up the plate and offered it to Kelly. The girl looked at her in disbelief, then slowly reached out and took one cookie, immediately shoving it whole into her mouth. "You'll choke, be careful," Amanda laughed. Only then did she notice the girl's hair was tangled and there were dirty spots on her face. Her clothes were also in poor condition. Her t-shirt was in need of washing, and her jean shorts had long since lost their appearance. "I won't choke," the girl said. "Can I have some more?" Amanda nodded. Kelly took another cookie and hid it behind her back, as if afraid Amanda would change her mind. "Thank you," the girl said quietly. "You're welcome. Who's your mum? Where is she?" "Mummy's home and Daddy's home. Mummy's name is Christine and Daddy's name is Hamish. They're still asleep." Amanda was surprised. It's almost noon. At this time, almost no one in the village is still asleep. How did the child manage to sneak out of the house? Perhaps I should take her back to her parents. They might already be looking for her. Amanda didn't have an opportunity to find out where the little girl lived.
"Oh, Kelly, hello."
Mr. O'Reilly stood at the gate. Upon seeing the old man, the girl smiled, revealing a missing front tooth, and swiftly ran towards the fence with her arms spread wide. Mr. O'Reilly effortlessly lifted the girl into his arms.
"So, you've come to get acquainted?"
Kelly nodded. Mr. O'Reilly then addressed Amanda.
"I'll go feed Kelly. Join us for dinner this evening."
Amanda looked at Mr. O'Reilly in surprise, wondering about the girl's relationship with him, and why he'd never mentioned her before. She took a sip of her cooled tea and resumed her reading. That evening, Amanda discovered that Kelly was the daughter of a couple that Kendra had fired for alcoholism.
"Christine and Hamish seemed normal,"
Mrs. O'Reilly began.
"Hamish went to the city for a few months to earn money, started drinking there, and eventually dragged Christine into it. You know how women drink? They drink to lessen the man's guilt, and then they end up drinking themselves to death. That's what happened to them. The whole village feels sorry for Kelly. Her mother neglects her. She rarely makes something to eat. When they go on a bender, Kelly stays with us. We've written to child services, but they don't care."
"Perhaps it's better to have parents than to be in an orphanage." Amanda sighed. She felt a deep pang of sympathy for the little girl, realizing her own life's difficulties paled in comparison.
"There are practically none,"
Mr. O'Reilly replied.
"She's starting school soon and no one is teaching her. She's 6 years old and she can't read or write, and her speech is poor. Our Adrian could already read at that age. Do you remember, honey?"
Mrs. O'Reilly nodded. Adrian was her first son from her first marriage. Mr. O'Reilly regarded him as his own child and often boasted about Adrian's achievements. Adrian had trained to be a physicist and was now a university lecturer. From that evening, Amanda took an interest in little Kelly. The girl began visiting her in the evenings, and they would enjoy tea with candy and cookies. During another trip to the city, Amanda even brought her a doll. Kelly was so overjoyed that she almost cried. It was the first time Amanda had seen a child cry from happiness. It turned out that Kelly had almost no toys, just an old plastic doll, long missing its eyes and one hand, that she had inherited from her mother. Kelly indeed had difficulty speaking. Amanda began to work with her, using skills she had learned at the college. Surprisingly, the little girl was very talented. She absorbed knowledge like a sponge. Soon she could write her name on a piece of paper and recite a couple of poems. Kelly began spending increasing amounts of time at Amanda's place. Amanda even set up a cozy sleeping area for her on a folding chair, purchased cheaply from a farm worker. Looking at Kelly, Amanda longed for a child of her own. She found that her maternal love was not wasted on Kelly. At times, she wished she could kidnap her from her parents and keep her herself forever. Fate decided it all. A fire broke out in the house where Kelly's parents, Christine and Hamish, lived. The fire likely started from a lit cigarette dropped on the floor. Kelly's parents perished in the fire, but neighbours managed to rescue Kelly in time. It was discovered that Kelly had no other relatives. Amanda despaired. Will the girl end up in an orphanage? Kendra, aware of Amanda's unofficial guardianship over Kelly, helped resolve the issue. She assisted with the guardianship service, and Amanda became Kelly's legal guardian. At first it was difficult. Kelly constantly cried, called for her parents and refused to eat. Amanda even took her to a city psychologist. But after a few months, Kelly began to open up and smile more often. She enjoyed playing with dolls and asked Amanda to read her stories at night. She didn't call Amanda Mum, but the psychologist advised not to push it. Give her time to adapt. She'll realize that you love her. Don't demand anything. The child has suffered a terrible trauma, he advised Amanda, who heeded his counsel. While Amanda was at work, Mrs. O'Reilly cared for Kelly. In the evenings they would go out to meet a weary Amanda returning from work. Each time, upon seeing her foster mother, Kelly would run to her, bouncing joyfully with each step. In these moments, Amanda felt absolute happiness. Despite losing her husband and radically changing her life, she found joy in this girl she loved with all her heart. Perhaps her true happiness lay here. Who knows? Amanda's grandmother always said that God works in mysterious ways, often taking something away only to give something back. In Amanda's case, what she gained seemed far more significant than her lost relationship with Peter. Her work was going well. She had not only formed a friendship with Mia, but also with Kendra. With a salary increase, she began saving for some home improvements. She continued writing her novels, hesitantly sharing them, thinking that no one would be interested in her writings. Peter neither wrote nor called her, not even for her birthday. While this saddened Amanda, she chose not to dwell on it. She spent her birthday with Kelly, Mia, Mr. and Mrs. O'Reilly. Mrs. O'Reilly baked a honey cake. Mia gifted her a set of pretty dishes for the kitchen, and Kelly handmade a card. After blowing out the candles on the cake, Amanda felt an unusual sense of peace. It was as though all life's puzzle pieces had finally fallen into place. This was a feeling she had seldom experienced in her past. With the party guests departed, Amanda tucked Kelly into bed and retreated to the porch for some quiet reflection. Above her, constellations sparkled brightly. The breeze carried the sweet scent of wild flowers and hay, and crickets serenaded from the grass. She closed her eyes and made a wish for a man to enter her life, someone she could love sincerely, someone who would love her and accept her along with Kelly. As she looked up at the sky, it seemed to her that the brightest star winked at her knowingly. The distant song of a nightingale seemed to be a positive omen. A few days later, Kelly fell sick. The weather had been cold, and Kelly had rushed out of the house in only a light jacket. Amanda chided herself for not being more vigilant. Mrs. O'Reilly tried to comfort her, saying that all children fall ill, and it's not the parents' fault.
My throat hurts,
the girl complained, looking up at her foster mother.
It feels like a cat is scratching it with its claws. Can you stay with me?
She coughed to validate her words. Amanda gently stroked the girl's head. Of course, I'll stay with you at home. Sweetheart, I just need to call work. Before the weekend, Amanda brought her work home. She had to complete some reports. Despite finishing the reports, she encountered a problem with the internet connection, which prevented her from submitting them. She called the local internet provider and was informed that the connection would only be restored in the evening. In despair, Amanda phoned Mia. I spent the whole weekend on reports, and Kelly is running a fever. Amanda nearly wept. I'll ask a neighbour to babysit and be right there with documents. Amanda, don't! Mrs. Smith is on her way from the city. I'll call her, and she'll take your documents on a flash drive. Amanda hung up and turned on her laptop. She quickly located the necessary documents and transferred them to a flash drive. Clutching the drive, she ran to the gate just as Kendra's car rounded the corner. After handing over the flash drive with documents, Amanda apologized to her boss for her absence. "Amanda, it's all right. Kids get sick, it's completely normal," Kendra reassured her. "Nothing terrible will happen during a couple of days of your absence." Amanda spent the rest of the day caring for Kelly. She read her fairy tales, served her tea with raspberry jam, which Mrs. O'Reilly brought, and checked Kelly's temperature every half hour. Kelly was coughing, but felt okay, and even asked to go for a walk by evening, which Amanda firmly denied. The next morning, Amanda was awakened by a call from Kendra. "Good morning, Amanda." "Good morning, is something wrong?" Amanda responded, to which Kendra laughed. "No, nothing happened. Thank you for the paperwork. As always, everything is done perfectly. But I wanted to ask you something." Amanda began to feel uneasy, fearing she had made a mistake and would lose her job. "Yes, I'm listening," she mumbled into the receiver. "You seem to have inadvertently saved not only the reports, but also the detective book onto your thumb drive. I found a document with just a number on it. I opened it thinking it might contain additional report details." Suddenly, Amanda felt a chill. She had forgotten to delete her detective novel from the flash drive. She was sure she would be mocked as the village writer. She remembered Peter's words. "Not everyone can be a writer." "Well, it's just something I found on the internet. You know, there's a lot of stuff posted," Amanda rambled. Kendra interrupted her. "Why nonsense? I just wanted to know the author's name to find out more of their detective novels. I finished reading it this morning. I couldn't put it down. Mia's reading it now and she likes it too. Do you have anything else?" Amanda was speechless. Peter was the only person who read her work because she was apprehensive about sharing it online. "Amanda, what is it?" Kendra seemed taken aback by Amanda's silence. "Did I ask something wrong?" "No, not at all," Kendra stammered, swallowing a lump that had suddenly formed in her throat. She felt this whenever she was anxious. During her time at the college, she sometimes found herself speechless when faced with the sternest of teachers. "So, do you have any more novels by this author? Or at least, tell me his or her name. I'll download it myself." "Kendra, Amanda took a deep breath, then blurted out. "I wrote it." "You did? Wow, I'm really speechless. Do you have more?" "Well, yeah. I just don't show it to anyone. You see, my husband, he said, I'm not very good at it." "My husband, on the other hand, loved your novel. Trust me, he knows a lot about detective stories." Kendra interrupted Amanda. "I insist you share your work. If you're shy, I won't tell anyone. But it's really well written. Is the main character based on me? She also owns a farm, and even looks similar." Amanda blushed. "Yes, from you." Kendra laughed. "I really liked it. I'd be happy if you could email me your work." "Just don't show it to anyone else," Amanda whispered. "Can my husband see it?" Kendra asked. "Okay, he can," Amanda sighed. Amanda thought to herself, "I've embarrassed myself. Kendra was probably just joking. Who could possibly like my talentless writing? But there's nothing I can do. I've already promised her my work." Amanda sent 2 finished detective stories to her boss's email, apologizing in advance for any disappointment. A few days later, Kelly fully recovered, and Amanda went to work. Upon arrival, Mia greeted her with excitement.
"You're a real writer."
"No, I just write for fun," Amanda mumbled, wishing she could disappear. "No way! Why didn't you tell anyone? I was reading and I couldn't stop. I even guessed who killed the man. I immediately realized they were competitors.
And the investigator was so cunning. He knew right away, didn't he? He wanted the criminals to expose themselves. The way he cornered them at the end was brilliant."
Mia rambled on, while Amanda stared at the documents on her computer monitor, trying to focus. Does anyone really like what she writes? It can't be. Peter wouldn't cheat. He knows literature very well. In the evening, Kendra returned from the city and summoned Amanda to her room.
"Amanda, have you considered publishing something? Let's give it a try."
Amanda protested. No way. The publishing house would laugh at me. Do you know how many manuscripts they receive daily? And me, with my little books. You should give it a shot, Kendra interrupted. There's no harm in trying. No, I don't want to. Amanda declined, looking down. I really don't. You know, Amanda, I can't force you, but I believe that a person who hides their talents is committing an unforgivable sin. If I had doubted myself, I wouldn't own this farm. People laughed at me, saying I was a woman entering business. But look at the result. We have jobs, our cheeses have won competitions, and we supply restaurants. Now, go home. Your daughter must be waiting. Amanda walked home leisurely, enjoying the perfect weather. As she passed the sunflower field, she paused for a moment. They always filled her with optimism. What Amanda appreciated most about sunflowers was how they always turned towards the sun. People often abandon their dreams, looking everywhere except where they want to go. Maybe I should heed Kendra's advice. So what if I receive a negative review? After everything I've been through recently, a little criticism won't faze me. After taking Kelly from Mrs. O'Reilly, Amanda took care of her daughter, putting her to bed. She then selected 2 of her favourite novels. The first was recently completed and had been read by Mia and Kendra. The second was written about 5 years ago, inspired by a news item about a highly expensive stamp. She began imagining how a person intending to steal that stamp would behave. The result was a captivating story about a protagonist who dedicates a lot of time devising the perfect stealing plan. Amanda sent the manuscripts to 2 publishers and went to bed. However, sleep eluded her as she contemplated her possibly presumptuous actions. It was the long-awaited weekend. Mrs. O'Reilly left early in the morning to see her son in the city. She asked Amanda to check on Mr. O'Reilly, mentioning his complaints about his heart and a persistent headache. Despite her concern, Mrs. O'Reilly had to leave for her son Adrian's birthday. Amanda agreed to help. Her weekend plans involved spending time with Kelly, walking into the woods, and doing crafts, an activity Kelly loved. They frequently spent their weekends searching for beautiful twigs, flowers, and cones in the forest. At noon, Amanda visited Mr. O'Reilly. He appeared cheerful, dismissing his wife's concerns as an exaggeration.
Just a headache, he grumbled. I'll rest, watch TV, and you can come over in the evening. We'll have tea, all 3 of us.
In the evening, Mr. O'Reilly's house was lit, but when Amanda knocked, she didn't hear the usual sound of the man's footsteps. Is he sleeping? Kelly asked. I don't know, sweetheart, Amanda nodded. Let's knock loudly. Kelly started pounding her fists against the door. Still there was no answer. Maybe he went out, she suggested. Stay here, dear, Amanda instructed. Then she ran off the porch and peered through the master bedroom window. The sight made her blood run cold. Mr. O'Reilly was lying on the floor, unable to rise, resembling an overturned beetle. Amanda hurried back to the door and pushed with all her strength, but it wouldn't budge. She rushed to the neighbouring house where Ferguson and Mandy lived. They didn't interact often, but they always exchanged pleasantries. Fortunately, Ferguson was in his vegetable garden. Ferguson, help! Something's wrong with Mr. O'Reilly, she cried. Without hesitation, Ferguson rushed towards her, asking, What is it? I knocked, but he wouldn't open the door. I looked through the bedroom window and he's lying there, Amanda stammered. And Mrs. O'Reilly's not home. Ferguson managed to open the door effortlessly. Upon entering, Amanda found Mr. O'Reilly lying on the floor with oddly cloudy and uncomprehending eyes. A tear streamed down his left cheek. Amanda noticed the old man's face had become strangely asymmetrical, as if one side had been ironed flat. His left cheek swelled with each breath, resembling a billowing sail. "Call an ambulance!" Amanda shouted. After the ambulance arrived, Amanda left Kelly with Mandy, and Ferguson and she herself accompanied Mr. O'Reilly to the hospital. In the emergency room, a distraught Mrs. O'Reilly was already waiting for them, accompanied by a tall man, around 40 years old. "Mrs. O'Reilly, I'm sorry. I didn't follow. I went out with Kelly for the day." Amanda almost cried in despair, feeling responsible for what had happened. "Come on. If it wasn't for you, he would have been lying there, alone." Mrs. O'Reilly burst into tears, burying her face into her son's chest. "Adrian," the man introduced himself, looking at Amanda. "Amanda, the neighbour." "I've heard a lot about you." Adrian nodded. "Well, all we can do is wait." The doctor arrived an hour later with good news. The stroke had likely happened just before Amanda's visit. "It's reversible. I think he'll be on the mend soon. Of course, his age is a factor, but as far as I understand, there are no serious health problems, and we have done everything necessary," said the doctor. Mrs. O'Reilly sighed loudly. Adrian was still speaking with the doctor about something, but Amanda couldn't hear him. She held the weeping Mrs. O'Reilly and felt relieved that things could still turn around. Mr. O'Reilly remained in the hospital for almost a month. Amanda visited him regularly. Mrs. O'Reilly stayed at her son's house in the city to be close to her husband. When Mr. and Mrs. O'Reilly returned home, Amanda immediately visited them with Kelly. The only reminders of what had happened were slight weakness in Mr. O'Reilly's left arm and an unsteady gait. However, the doctors assured that these would improve over time. Mr. O'Reilly joked about his condition and chided his wife, who tried to do everything for him.
"I'm not helpless. I can do it myself,"
he grumbled. But Amanda noticed the boundless warmth in his eyes when he looked at Mrs. O'Reilly and felt a twinge of envy. She wished she had a man who would stay with her till her last days and look at her with the same affection, even when she reached 60, 70, 80 years old. 3 days after Mr. O'Reilly was discharged, Amanda was returning from work. As she approached her gate, she noticed a stranger. Drawing closer, she recognized Adrian, standing with a bouquet of roses in his hands. "Hello, Amanda. I completely forgot to thank you. If it weren't for you, my father might not be with us." He handed the bouquet to her and smiled. "I've heard a lot about you. You're a very good woman." "What am I good at?" Amanda sighed. "Nothing remarkable." "Not everyone could take in someone else's child," Adrian said, looking down at his feet, clearly embarrassed, "and change her life like that. That's why I think you're good. I've been dreaming of meeting you for a long time. I think my mum secretly dreams that we will get married. Can you imagine?" Amanda laughed. "It's just she doesn't know me well. Come in. I'll go get Kelly. We can have tea. I baked a cake yesterday, using your mum's recipe, by the way." The evening turned out to be very pleasant. Adrian discussed his work, about students who don't want to grasp the basics of such a simple and intriguing science as quantum physics. Kelly announced that she will definitely become a physicist when she grows up. Amanda was astonished by how a simple village boy like Adrian was able to achieve such heights in science. She shared this sentiment with Adrian. "I've always loved physics. Despite being a bully, smoking since I was 10 and always getting into fights, I never missed a physics or math class," Adrian confessed. It was late in the evening when Kelly went to bed. Amanda walked Adrian to the gate. He took her phone number and promised to call, inviting her and her daughter to visit him in the city any time. To Amanda's surprise, Adrian began to call her almost daily. Initially, she thought he was just being polite or showing gratitude, but over time she realized that he genuinely liked her. He started visiting his parents more often, and even spent his vacation in the village, something he had never done before. Mrs. O'Reilly joked behind his back.
"Oh, Amanda, before you know it, he'll propose, and you'll be my daughter-in-law, and Kelly, my granddaughter."
As the new year approached, Amanda received a letter from a publishing house. She was too scared to open it for a few hours, and finally asked Mia to read it for her. "Just tell me if I was rejected. That's all, okay?" "I'll read out exactly what it says," Mia said, wriggling with impatience. "Can I open it?" "Go ahead." Amanda moved to the window, watching large snowflakes fall. She recalled a glass ball from her childhood, a gift from her grandmother. It enclosed a house with a snowman nearby. When shaken, tiny sparkling snowflakes would rise and slowly settle on the house's roof and the snowman's hat. Amanda cherished this toy, but unfortunately lost it during a move. "I should get something similar for Kelly," she mused aloud. "Amanda! Amanda!" Mia shouted, causing Amanda to jump. "What?" "They want you to send your other works. They're ready to publish your books." "Are you kidding me?" Amanda raced to the computer, scanning the letter's text. Mia was right. "Oh my God! How could this be?" She embraced Mia, kissing her on the cheek. "They want to publish me!" "What's going on?" Kendra peeked out from her office. "Are you girls starting the New Year's celebration early?" "Mrs. Smith, Amanda's books will be printed. You can put them on the shelf!" Mia exclaimed in excitement and joy. A smile spread across Kendra's face. "Congratulations, Amanda. You didn't believe me, but I was right. I hope you'll give me your first autograph." On New Year's Eve, Adrian visited his parents. Amanda and Kelly were invited as well. The party was a success. They decorated the Christmas tree in the yard, and Kelly recited poems about Santa Claus and the Snow Maiden. When the clock struck midnight, Adrian kissed Amanda directly on the lips, leaving her stunned. "Sorry, I've wanted to do this for a long time," he mumbled, looking into her astonished eyes. "If you've wanted to do it for a long time, you could have tried sooner," she laughed, playfully punching him in the shoulder.
"About time," added Mr. O'Reilly, squinting slyly. "I thought you'd never muster up the courage."
6 months passed. Amanda's life continued as usual. She still worked on the farm, but Adrian was pushing for a move to the city. He had officially proposed to her, and she had accepted, but she didn't want to rush things. One Saturday morning, as usual, she woke up before Kelly to prepare breakfast. Suddenly, she heard a car pull up. Amanda looked out the window and was startled to see Suzanne, her former mother-in-law, standing by the fence. Suzanne was staring intently at the house, as if trying to see through the window. Amanda set aside the bowl in which she was whipping eggs and milk for an omelette, wiped her hands on the towel hanging on the back of the chair, and went to greet the unexpected guest. Surprisingly, she felt calm, with no lump in her throat, cold hands or sweaty palms. Amanda approached the gate. "Good morning, Suzanne," Amanda greeted respectfully. "Hello, Amanda. I see you're settling in well. I told you it would be beneficial." Amanda tried to recall when her mother-in-law had said something similar, but she couldn't. "Yes, it's quite good here. What led you here?" "Why don't you let me in?" Suzanne asked unexpectedly. "Come in." Amanda opened the door and gestured invitingly. Suzanne walked past, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. In the kitchen, Amanda poured her former mother-in-law some tea and sat down across from her. "Suzanne, you didn't just come here for no reason, did you?" Amanda decided to break the silence first. "Not for no reason, that's correct." The woman sipped her tea and frowned. "I think it's time for you and Peter to reunite. What? Amanda nearly dropped her cup in surprise. What do you mean? Stop playing these foolish games, Amanda. Things happen between adults. I see what's happening with my son and his girlfriend. What exactly? Amanda inquired, reaching for a poppy seed roll. She's exploiting him, using him. Peter's lost weight, become nervous. You won't believe it. He's taken to drinking. It turns out she lied about being pregnant too. She's caught the poor boy on this lie. Suzanne lowered her voice. And he often tells me that he regrets his decision about the divorce, but he doesn't dare to approach you himself. So he sent his mother to negotiate? Amanda raised an eyebrow. It's not what you think. Suzanne slammed her cup down on the table. The amber liquid splashed across the white tablecloth, causing stains to spread. He's in agony. It's painful to watch him. You know, Peter asked for a divorce and I didn't object. It's been a long time. I know everything. I've done my research, spoken to the locals while looking for your house. I know you've taken in a foster child. That's fine. It's a problem that can be solved. What do you mean? Outrage began to simmer in Amanda's chest. It's someone else's child, and you know it well. I hope you've had your fill of playing mum and are ready to come back. You haven't succeeded as a specialist or as a mother. Try at least to succeed as a wife. Peter is ready for your comeback. Go away. Amanda stood up quickly, looking down at her mother-in-law. Just leave, or I can't be responsible for my actions. Amanda, I didn't think you were so foolish. Where else will you find a husband, especially at 34, with another person's child in your arms? I've heard she's the daughter of alcoholics. Leave. Amanda was struggling to control herself. I will leave, but know that you'll regret this. Suzanne rose majestically from the table. Stay in this filthy house, then. With that, the woman left, slamming the door behind her. Annoyed, Amanda thought that she might have awakened Kelly. Sure enough, the girl appeared in the kitchen doorway. Who is it? A bad woman? Not bad, Amanda mused. Just not smart. Go wash your face, sweetheart. Your favourite omelette is coming soon. Okay, Mum. Kelly headed towards the sink, leaving Amanda frozen in her tracks. Tears welled up in her eyes. It was the first time Kelly had called her Mum. Amanda knew that she would never give her child to anyone else. She would soon be the wife of the best, smartest man in the world, and her books would be published. As her grandmother used to say, wishes do come true. They always do. The most important thing is to believe that they will.